Okay, now our edging is all in, but we still have this mound to deal with. So I just get right in and start shaping it up. Our berm will take shape as you go. You just have to step back, take a look at it, shovel a little bit more, rake a little bit more, and pretty soon you know exactly where you're gonna go with it. All shaped up, now we're ready to start our wall. What I first do is I kind of take a look at where I want to start my wall, and I give it kind of a little shape. Now nothing is set in stone yet, because we can change it. First things first, very, very important. Make sure you use a layer of weed barrier fabric underneath your stone wall. If you do not, you will have problems with weeds growing through it. The soil will come through it. You will have a mess. And what is the point if you're going to this much work? Now, I use these wonderful DeWitt pins. They're removable fabric pins that just hold things in place while I'm working. Then I can take them out and replace them with the big metal pins later. Make sure, and I've said this over and over and over again, and I'm going to say it again, use the best weed barrier fabric there is, and that is DeWitt. This is DeWitt Fabric Landscape Pro for rock. It's brown. I love to use brown because my bark covers nicely, but this is the best there is. And weed barrier is my legacy. Building a rock wall is just like putting together a jigsaw puzzle. You pick them up, you roll them around, you put them back down, you pick them up, you roll them around again, you throw that one aside, you grab another one, look at the colors, add a different color here, there. It's very fun to do. If you find that there's a stone that you really want to use, but it's not fitting quite right where you need it to be, pick your weed barrier up and kind of dig out where it needs to sit. It gives it a little cradle to sit in, and sometimes that'll work out just fine. When I was at Red Flint, Steve told me make sure and bring some little stickers, he calls them. Some little tiny rocks, some smaller rocks, half rocks, pieces of rocks, so that sometimes you need just a little bit of a help just to get the right rock in the right spot. In this application, we are basically building a little stone wall that's more decorative than functional. We're not holding back a ton of soil, so we don't have to worry about our backfill as much or any drain tile. But I do want you to make sure your soil fits up really tight to the back side of the wall, bringing a weed barrier back so the top weed barrier can go over that. When you end your stone walls, make sure they jet into the soil so they look just a little bit more natural than stopping abruptly. And here's our rock wall. It turned out beautiful. We love it. Another great tip, when adding stones to your area like we're doing here, stones in nature don't just pop up out of the soil. They are actually embedded in the soil and work their way out. So what we do here is dig a small indentation, plop the rock in, work with it a little bit, and then when you come back and you want to put your weed barrier down, you just roll your stone out and we put our stone back in the indentation. Now comes some fun stuff. We went to Bailey's Nurseries along with Monrovia Growers to select our plants. And the reason I do that is I know exactly where those plants come from. I know they're hardy and they're locally grown. We chose a flowering crabapple from Bailey's Nursery to put on the top of our mound. It's going to be beautiful and a great accent. Now here I'm planting one of my favorites, birch leaf spirea from Monrovia Growers. Another of my favorites from Monrovia, flower carpet rose pink supreme and Hackanachoa all gold. Beautiful accents here. Now it's time to plant my tree. Dig your hole 1.5 times larger than the container it comes out of. Then I give it a little trim and I backfill with some wonderful Cosmos compost. Next on my planting list is this Walker's Low Catmint, also from Monrovia. Grows 18 inches tall and 2 feet wide, will cascade over with beautiful purple flowers. Next, Little Princess Spirea, a standard in your landscape, and what I mean by standard, she gives you the bones of the backbones of your design. Now a signature in my designs always come with hydrangea. This time I've used Incredible Hydrangea from Bailey's Nursery. With our plants all in, it's time to start the weed barrier fabric. Put your fabric down on the straight edge of the plant bed, ensuring that you overlap your edging at least 3 to 4 inches so that you can tuck it under and pin it down. That'll prevent weeds from coming up next to your edge. I use DeWitt barrier pins. Now these are landscape pins that are really long, they're really durable, and they are wonderful to work with. Make sure you pin it quite often because you can lift them out when you're done and use them again. But when you're working by yourself like I am here and the wind's blowing, it's really nice to have your fabric secure. And even when you put your hardscape down, whether it be wheeling across it with a wheelbarrow or what have you, it's really nice that your fabric is durable and pinned down nice so that it doesn't move later. When you get to a plant, simply lift your weed barrier fabric up, holding it tight. Then I use my sharp utility knife and I cut a hole around the plant. Make sure you leave a lot of room around that plant. If you get any weeds at all, it'll just be little tiny weeds, and that's easy plucking. But that plant needs lots of room to grow and to breathe. What I do with the excess fabric is I simply tuck it underneath and she stays right there. When you get to the stones, you've already made a pocket underneath that rock. So all you need to do is lift out your stone, Press it down in with the weed barrier fabric and then put your stone back. When you put your hardscape down, that stone will look very, very natural. I know I am repeating myself when I say make sure you overlap the edge at least 3 to 4 inches so that you can turn it under, tuck it down, and pin it. Because if you do not do that, you'll have a problem with stretching of that fabric. It'll stretch away from the edge, then you're going to have weeds come up on the inside, and we don't want to have that. That is a big problem. Now we're at the point of working our weed barrier fabric right up next to our stone. Remember, when we made our stone wall, we left a nice big flap of weed barrier underneath so that we can lay this fabric right on top of that, and it will make a nice even fabric roll for us. Here I've added a wonderful coral bell. One of my absolute favorite heucherias is Frosted Violet from Monrovia. If you have not used coral bells, these are one of the best accents that you can add to any landscape project. Here at the top of my wall, I want to leave a little overlap of fabric so that I can tuck it under and pin it down so that it matches the flap that I left on the top of the wall when we put the wall in. I use fabric pins also on the top of the wall, but what I also like to do, and it helps keep it secure, if you can move some of those top stones, then you pick them up and tuck that fabric underneath and pin it, and it's not going to go anywhere. Now it's time for bark. This is one of my favoriteest things in the world, to watch these guys load my bark. And again, we went back to red flint rock and stone in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. Here we're using golden bark that will accent our rock wall and our plantings. I've heard many times people say, I don't use bark because it's more maintenance. Stone is less maintenance. Well, in a way you're right. But if you put just a thin layer of bark down the first year, the next season all you need to do is top dress it lightly to bring your color back. Then your third year, maybe rake off the first little bit of layer and add a top dress, and the fourth year replace. But it is beautiful. Its accent allows you to change. You could add red one year, you could add brown one year, you could completely change it up, take it all off, and add stone. But stone is there to stay. So when you're choosing your hardscape, there's a lot of different choices to make. Now that our project is done, let's recap. We had a green lawn. That's where we needed our pile of soil, 8 yards to be exact. Then we set out to put our edging in. We raked and we tilled and we packed and we pounded until finally I cannot wait to show you what it looks like now. This is the winter look, and I am excited to show you next year the spring look. Today's episode of Garden Wise Living is using Hardscape in your landscape. I would like to say a special thank you to Red Flint Rock and Stone and Steve Sletner for inspiring us to get out there and do some hardscape. Our concrete bullet edges came from County Materials in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. And for the best down-to-earth protection, use DeWitt Weed Barrier Fabric. Thank you very much, DeWitt. When choosing plants, only choose the best. Bailey's Nurseries and Monrovia Growers. Garden Wise Living is produced by Arlena Schott of Garden Wise Productions. If you would like more information on what you've seen on this show or other shows, log on to our website, gardenwiseliving.com, or follow me on Twitter and Facebook. Now for a special thank you to my husband, Steve Schott, his friends Jeff Rick and Stan Dervin for the beautiful music played today on Garden Wise Living. I'm your host, Arlena Schott, and don't forget to garden wise.